Our first speaker today is architect Madhusudhan Chalasani from Studio Made. Studio Made was born in 2007 as an idea-driven practice to develop public projects commissioned through architectural competitions. The studio's work reflects the hybrid character of its team drawn from across India and Spain. The work is thus a product of cultural interchange made by virtual collaboration. Focusing only on competitions that engage with the public realm, the studio produces an architecture that transcends cultural specificity and fosters cross-fertilization. The practice primarily focuses on international competitions and self-originated projects that engage in the public realm. The practice's work has received several international awards that include the Holcim Award for Sustainable Construction, Switzerland, the European Center for Architecture and the Chicago Athenaeum International Architecture Awards 2014 for a school in Jharkhand, and a competition-winning design for the Central Mosque at Pristina, Kosovo. The studio also won an international competition to create an art museum in Suncheon City, South Korea. Working primarily on competitions has helped Studio Made think about the emerging challenges of society and allowed the practice to extend its limits beyond that of the built work. I request architect Madhusudhan to please join us on the stage.
So I would like to start by not thanking the organizers for inviting me. I'm wondering, what am I doing here? And like my fellow panelist and the speaker today was the first one to drag me out of my rat hole, which I always wanted to be in. And I also curse him for this. So I'm acutely aware of the occasion and why I've been invited here, but my best homage to Professor Doshi would be not to talk about him. All of you know enough and more about him, and I wish not to add anything more to it. And whatever I'm going to speak from now on was some way a reflection of the time I spent with him. But I do not want to talk anything specific about my relationship with him or how he has influenced me. My work will speak for itself. And see, I've structured when I was invited and Girisha told me that, you have to come here to inspire students. I said, how do I do that? He said, just talk about your work and that's enough. And I said, talking about my work is also of no significance because everybody has to find their own way of doing it. And it doesn't matter. One's work actually doesn't inspire or otherwise to anybody. So I rather want to discuss about what happened when I started my practice, what was my original intentions, how I struggled, and then eventually what I do, like how did I reach this place and to whatever I am doing it. So I would primarily like to construct the presentation as a construction of my practice. And I would not like to talk much about, because architects talk too much about their work. So I would rather leave the images and the drawings to speak for themselves. And I would focus on what actually happened behind this project, how did we reach where we reached, and then how each one of them shaped us as a practice. So it's more about constructing a practice and less about constructing buildings. Post my working with Professor Doshi, I went to Harvard to do masters. And then when I wanted to come back, I realized that maybe I should work for some time, either in Europe or US, before I come back. So I ended up working in Spain for Professor Monio. And it has completely changed my perception of architecture. I don't demean my architectural education or my experience with Professor Doshi. The truth is, I haven't learned anything from them. Because we are so much into myth making and making hero of everybody, and then you hardly go into the content and really go to the depth and understand it. And that is precisely is the problem that's ailing our architecture. It's good to hero worship, but you also need to question certain things what these masters were pursuing. And I directly hold Charles Correa and Professor Doshi responsible for the sad state of architecture in our country. I know not many people will appreciate me saying this, but that's harsh truth. And I will elaborate why. So when I came back in 2000, see, I worked in a culture, in an architectural culture where everybody, small architect, big architect, they have to compete for projects. It's meritocratic culture for architecture. So 4 years in my naiveness, I spent there like trying to upgrade my skills, trying to understand what exactly goes behind this. And I was astonished to find every project in that country went through a competition route. Everybody, even Professor Manyo, after winning the Pritzker, even if he has to get an extension of a small museum, he has to participate in a competition, win the competition, and then only he'll be allowed to build. And I later came to know he had a role in this altogether. When they became republic in, I think, 84 or something like that, they kind of incorporated in the constitution that every public project has to go through a competition route, and each and every architect gets paid the same fees across the country, irrespective of hierarchy and who they are. And it holds good. And when after reaching there, I realized that how much this man was revered by the architectural community there, and why. He was competing with some of his students and losing some of the competitions, something you cannot think about happening in India. But that's how culture, meritocratic societies are made. And we used to make 12 competitions, 13 competitions in a year, so just like running, You get exhausted, next day morning you have to work on another one. So there was absolutely no discussion about whether somebody is winning. They win some, they lose some. The machine goes on. And then I realized this is it. This is where the skills get built. It's not that you sit on something for months and months and months and months and then where is the, of course you're thinking deep, but where are the skill sets to develop the projects? And I also realized the fundamental difference in practices between India, and there are some senior architects, and the criticism goes to them also. Did you develop a set of people in the office who are equally competent? Can any architect claim that they have trained enough, threshold of people who are equally competent to make projects? No. These masters were suffering from insecurity. They ensured that nobody grew under the big trees. And it's a harsh reality. And then I was wondering, how did Spanish architects get so much of reach and how much of less? This man, being a Pritzker laureate, going left, right, center, everywhere, promoting the talent in the country. And there was a time in, I think, 2000, there were 7 or 8 universities, top universities in the world were led by Spanish. How did it happen? This man was going and promoting young talent, telling everyone, okay, this guy is good, you should watch out for him, and he's a great teacher, you should give him an opportunity. That's how actually architectural cultures are built. Not by hero worshipping. And in my office, when I was working, there were like a couple of senior architects working, Mansila and Tuno. They were brilliant architects in their own way. And we used to rip money over left, right, and center when we were discussing the projects. Something I cannot imagine happening in India. So with this background, when I came back to India, I was so stupid and naive. I said, I'm not going to take any private projects. I'm not going to do any so-called commercial work. I won't say it's bad or right. I thought that, like, I was obsessed with, I felt like, one of the problems ailing our architecture is we don't have anything called public architecture except the metro stations you see in Pune. So there's no public architecture as such. So I was just thinking that, okay, I will not indulge in taking up any of these second homes or any other architectural projects. I would like to focus on competitions. I was naive enough not to understand that there is nothing like competition in this country. Even if they are prefixed, it's a time waste. So in that initial phases, I ended up participating in a competition in Maharashtra. There's a temple called Tuljapur. There was a competition to restructure the temple complex. Solo. There is nobody to help me. I had no office, a small place in the house, and then I had to do everything. For I think 2.5 months, I absolutely worked. Day, night, no sleep, nothing. And I ended up winning the competition, but for all good reasons, it never got realized, got me depressed. I was called to Mantralaya, I was called to all kinds of people, give presentation to chief minister, this minister, that minister. Nothing happened. After 1 year, I realized it's a waste of time. They just used to give me money and keep calling me for these meetings. When they know very well nothing will happen. Nothing will get built also. So then what do I do? What do I do? I don't want to do the, by then I was absolutely committed that either I will quit practice or not do architecture or do my way, if that is possible. So from 2018 to 2012, I locked myself in a room, just reading. Nobody knew my existence. I'm sure many of you don't know our existence, if not for Bijoy and Girish, but I was very content. I was reading, I was trying to do things. But I always knew what I should not do. But I didn't know what to do either. But I knew that these things I won't do. I will not repeat what I'm a critique of. So I will not do this, I will not do that. There's a list of not do's, but I don't know what to do. And you won't believe, this is 2023, not a single client has called my office, nor I ever visited a client's place. It might sound bizarre, but that's true. So we were living in a kind of an isolated state, but I just hung on. Luckily, I struck a deal with my parents that, okay, I'll stay with them with an implied understanding they won't ask me what I do. If I earn anything or not, they're not supposed to ask. That's the deal. They said more than happy, so okay, fine. So it's thanks to them, they didn't ask also for 4 years. So sometimes in end of 2011, 2012, I received an email from Spain saying that Mansilo and Tunon is looking for a studio assistant for a course in University of Navarra. Will I be interested? And they said, anyway, you're not doing anything, why don't you come? So they also knew I was not doing anything actually. So I said, yeah, it's fine, I'll come. So I went there. That's the first, after 4 years, that was my first exposure to, again, to architecture in real world, talking to people in real world. I said, then I started enjoying it back, like the conversations, and then there was no monologue also for 4 years. Basically, I was reading, immersing myself in. I was hoping one day when opportunities arise, I should be ready. That's the only thing, you know. So, and then I went, I went there, and it so happened, coincidentally, Spain was going through a recession post 2009 or something. There were a lot of good architects, no work. So one of the young graduates said, sir, I want to come to India. Initially I thought of China, but I thought India is better. I said, why? Cost of living is cheap. Okay, good. But I myself don't have any work. What will you come and do here? So no, sir, no problem. Like, we'll manage. I said, what? This guy seems to be more competent than me. So, okay, come. And he is here with his wife. I said, अपन को तो खाना नहीं है, उसको कहाँ लेके आ गया तू? So why are you here with her? He's telling, no, if we don't earn anything, she's a Spanish teacher, we can, like, at least I can survive with her salary. I said, well, good, clever guy. So she immediately joined international school as a Spanish teacher, and then this guy. So what do we do? So for a month or so, we were just brainstorming. He was trying to understand what happens in India. I said, as far as I know, nothing happens. And whatever happens, we will never know. So how do we crack? So finally, we came to a conclusion that we will do competitions. Madhu, tell me, what are the competitions in India? I said, what competition? We don't have any competitions here. So everything gets built directly without anybody knowing about it. So what? Such a big country, vast population, no competition? I said, no. We don't believe in competition. We directly build it. We don't need anything. Our people can manage. So then finally we decided that, okay, we will do competitions. But Madhu, we are only, maybe two only are there, so we need one more person. Why don't we hire somebody locally? So we tried to get somebody. And trust me, again, a reflection of the state of architecture in our country. We could not find one person who could draft properly. Forget about design. किसी को drawing बनाना भी नहीं आता है, किसी को section बनाना भी नहीं आता है. So he is much younger to me. He told me, Madhu, what kind of shithole you are sitting here? You can't get projects, you can't get architects. I said, you can't choose the shithole you are born into, no. So what to do? I have to be here only. So then we decided, okay, we'll do competition. We'll get one student from Spain. He was referring to somebody who's really good at whatever he does. So we invited him to come for 4 months, and with an understanding that he'll go back after 4 months if nothing gets. So we started. So we started in late 2013 is what all these conversations were going on. So the important thing I realized was, at that time, from my own experience in Doshi's office, I also have to highlight, I was in the office at a time when he had no projects. Just after VDB, I think 2018 or something, he had nothing. I had nothing to do, he also had nothing to do. Nobody else had anything to do with the office. Everybody was free. So it gave me time to read at least his older projects. And then I realized that, okay, there were certain things which I was so angry about, there's nothing I could do about. I don't know what I'll do, but I will not repeat the same mistakes those offices made. Because I knew at that time, if there was a project in Doshi's office, post all the old people leaving the office had no people who were worthy of making a project. So they were just working with interns. You can't make projects out of interns, and especially our interns from our schools. So I just said, okay, At least let's not make that. I told the guys that, boss, this is what it is. We have no money. We have to somehow survive. I get my food. Mario gets his food from his wife's salary. So let's see. Let's try for 4 months, 6 months, and then see what happens. These were the people who worked over. See, one of the great strengths I take very pride in, each one of them are still working with me. Each one of them has never worked in any architectural office, or they have left this office. Half of them are back in Spain. Some of them have got a PhD. They have become professors, but they're still part of MADE. So that day we made a thing, we will not take any architect who has ever worked in any other office. Somebody might ask why? Because mindsets are different, thought processes are different. So if you wanted to have that purity, let's not take anyone who has ever worked in any architectural office. So that was one of the conditions. So each one of them came on their own, completely skilled in at least one aspect of it. And if you take one aspect, they are much more skillful than I am in that particular aspect. So for me, the A was, how do I build trust among them and how do I retain them? Despite not having money, despite not having built projects, how do you do it? The challenge was that. So I was transparently telling them, this is what it is, but I don't want to let you people go. You guys find ways to make some money second, income. But on your own you came in. It's me who will decide whether you'll go or not, and you will not go out. खुद आए ना, कुलाटी मार के आए, नहीं है तो भी चलेगा, अभी रहो. So I was lucky enough to have people who were like, equally motivated, and some of them were extremely ambitious. I won't name them. Some of them will become international stars soon, on their own also. So I was just thinking so my primary job was to formulate something, ensure that the right person does the right things, and I ensure as the oldest member of the thing that I have an overview of everything, and then I have to also make them feel that they are part of the organization. It's not about me, or it's not about, so I am standing here showing a work which is a collective work, all of them, and I'm only one part of it. It's only accident that I'm the oldest member of the family, that's it. Other than that, I don't hold any privilege. All of them can shout me down about an idea or anything. They can overrule me, they can overrun me and do whatever they want. So that freedom they had. So some of them, maximum they could stay was 3 years because of the visa restrictions, but we all stuck together. Now, right now, I can pick a phone call and call any of them and tell I want this to be done in certain time. They will do it. It's not money that is making them do it. There's something more than that. What I have done over the 10 years for them to make an integral part of an organization is what makes them do. You will never hear a no from them, no matter how busy they are. And it's not that everybody is an international, some of them are Indian, so it's fine. And each one of them excels in at least one aspect of the practice. Some can write well, some can draw well, some can critique well. So I ensured that the best come in and they stay. And all of them will get 5 times the money they are earning in Studio Made if they go out and on their independently. But none of them want to go. So for me, my entire intent was to make a team like this 10 years down the lane, that I will say that these 10 people are my people and they constitute the practice. And to that extent, I can say I succeeded. And this is something I always critiqued, whether it is Professor Doshi or Korea. You can't find a single architect who has come out of those organizations and made it well in the. What happens? Why? It's not about only talent. There's something that much more, which I realized in Spain, that some other kind of a mentorship is required for someone to succeed independently. That doesn't exist in our society, unfortunately. So now I will run through the project with some of the ideas we always constantly discuss through our work. So I'm going to run through all the projects, representative projects done like over the last 10 years. Some of the competitions we won, some we had second prize. All of them were there on the table till the end to be discussed. We were the finalists in almost all for discussion. So what makes us tick? Independent, not once we are worried whether something gets built or not. Some of them do get built because if you win a competition, you have to build it. But that's a work by itself is a consequence of a process or a method or intent. We have put it in place way back in 2014. And I would like to focus on that and just run the projects as a consequence of it. So a lot of people ask me, including my fellow speaker once asked me, Madhu, how do you survive? See, Bijoy, I'm standing means I've survived, no. How I survived, like whether I fell down or whether I got hurt, it's okay. So these are like, in essence, especially when you're doing project, and also someone asked me, sir, how do you do projects in Korea, Switzerland, or whatever? You don't know anything about culture, anything. I said, I don't, even if you give me a project in India, I don't understand much about Indian culture also. So what do you mean? So we are trained to look at things, look at the information they provide in terms of site, in terms of a broader cultural context. We are supposed to interpret and make it. So I won't say this is the ideal way of doing it, or I won't even say that this is a replicable model for anybody, but in the given situation, I had no choice but to pursue this. And down the line, I want to prove that it's not just about talent. We are as talented as anybody else in the world. It's just that we don't have the mindset or the commitment to do something like that. So that's also one of my personal intent, that I just wanted to, having worked in the West, I just wanted to show we're as good, if not better than others. So there's no need for us to feel inferior about anything. So basically, I broadly, kind of summarize. When you do a project in an alien context means in many of the projects, we have not even seen the site before we committed ourselves to designing it. But by nature, competitions are such that you are supposed to be not seeing the site and still design. So we came out with an idea of first formulating an idea. So that means we do not draw for the first few weeks of our work. We just think, reflect, maybe read a lot of things about the place, the precedents that existed, internationally as well as locally, without committing ourselves. So one of the problems with this, the zero worship, one guy comes with a pencil and draws a sketch and everybody else is supposed to kind of develop it. No. So we said no. And this is something I learned in Professor Monio's office. He used to say, delay the commitment to a drawing as much as you can. Because the moment you draw that, you will spend the rest of your time defending it, rather than developing it. So the idea was, how do you spend those initial days and you have people from different cultural backgrounds. There may not be nothing common. They would have not studied anything common. But somehow over a period of time, we had developed a vocabulary of writing, a vocabulary of discussing, it helped that I worked in those cultures for some time. So, but now even the Indian ones are able to easily understand and talk. So the idea is some of them are here, some of them are, we have a small kind of a window in Spain, because some of them who came here as on a work visa had to go back because they were not extending their visa after 3 years. So for them, we had to open a small window. That means it's not a ceremonial office or anything like that. From one guy's house, we operate. So the other guys go there and work. So we work virtually in most cases. There's a time lag between, because 3 different time zones. One is Latin America, Spain, and India. So, but we were using it to our advantage. I do something and leave it in a Dropbox, and in the afternoon someone else takes it up and develops it further, and then in the night, like someone in Latin America does it. So by the time I come back next week, it would have taken another 2 leaps as a conceptual construct. So we evolved a point that, okay, we will in, like a typology, we will evolve an idea which is independent of the site. So not even bothered about the site. Okay, somebody wants to make a museum, somebody wants to make a park. So what is the conceptual construct of that park from both the historic perspective and so there's a lot of research, like somebody does precedent research, somebody like different people are doing in the team are doing different kind of things. We are having a conversation. And after 2 or 3 weeks, my job is to write something which becomes an initial intent for the project. So from that day onwards, everybody, whatever they do, has to align with that intent. Intent is not a movable object. Intent is defined, and then everybody, whatever design we do, has to somehow align with it. So we work independently, we work together. Somehow we come to a stage that we know exactly what we wanted to do, but design is not there as yet. So then the team shrinks. Only 1 or 2 people will be working in this phase of it, actually conceptualizing, discussing, and coming to some kind of a common thread or some kind of an agreement of what needs to be done. Once we do that, one of them will take over and develop it as a conceptual construct. One of the great strengths of my team is everybody is good in whatever they do. People who can draw exceptionally well. People who can model, they can exceptionally model. We make models, perhaps one of the few offices in our country, we exclusively work with sketch, writing, and model, and drawings for the competition are drawn only in the last 2 weeks of the project. We don't draw anything unless we are absolutely certain what needs to be done in a model, both in terms of form, how it relates to the surrounds. So this is the way we over a period of time, by trial and error, there was no precedent for us to follow. We had to make our own way of learning by making mistakes sometimes. So we in a way, we found our way of working. And it was very critical for me to retain the team, because we reached a stage when I talk half the sentence, the others will be able to complete it. So that's the level of communication and like back and forth understanding which happened, though they all come from different cultures. So I said, oh, okay, now my major work is a work, but my equally major work is to hold on to this team. These guys seems to know what to do now. If I disintegrate, which happens in many architectural practices, you don't know whether you'll become better or worse tomorrow if you lose the people. So I realized it's not money, it's not anything that holds people, it is the confidence they have in your colleagues that makes you continue working it. So they were all automatically, not once we had any conversation about money in the studio, but everybody is responsible to know exactly what is there expected of them. Everybody found their way of making some money for their survival, and still they are committed to the common way of working. So after the initial discussions and then conversations, we, of course, all these things have come later as a reflection of the practice also. But if you look back, these are the things when you talk, when you have a generic conception of an idea and then you put it on the site and see how it adjusts. Context comes much later. There's a pure idea, conceptual construct which is independent of the site, whether it's in Korea, whether it's in Switzerland, whether it is in France, or whether it's in Spain, or whether it's in India, whatever. So, and also some of the, then we spoke about the landscape. I'm talking about historic landscape over a period, what kind of a memory it holds, which also includes the climatic variations that exist. And then balancing between the forms. See, so basically you can say there are more keywords than in ideas, that these are the ones which essentially define our project. Now, each one of you, I want you to look at the project without me talking about it, whether they exist or not exist. I shall not describe any of my work. And I will only interject and talk about the story behind the project, and if there's something that we have done it differently is when I will speak about it. This was the first competition we did. Since we were searching for competitions, kahan milega competition kya? So since they're Spanish guys are so they found a competition in Portugal, and it so happened that Sotomoro and some 3-4 famous architects, which at that time we were thinking, if you even get to know them, it's enough. Forget about getting their acceptance of the work. So this was a competition which was at that time a hot topic in Europe, that there were a lot of industrial complexes that were getting decommissioned. How do you start repurposing? Because downtowns of more cities and also some peripheral parts of the cities were becoming dysfunctional because the original intent is no more there. How do you? And we have to understand Europe was going through a phase where they were not interested in building anymore, whether how do you kind of recycle it, how do you kind of repurpose the existing fabric of buildings rather than building new. So this competition was a kind of a competition conceptualized by the school in Porto for a brick kiln factory owner outside Porto. So he wanted to decommission that brick company because people don't use brick anymore, and he wanted to repurpose the thing into anything. The program was so free that you could give them the use you could put to, and it should be so generic that it could be replicable in some way as an idea in the other industrial complexes that were getting decommissioned on the outskirts of Porto. That was the only one, sorry. Okay, this I'll come back a little later. This is an Indian project, so I'll come back. So this was the first kind of an iteration of a trial of what I was trying to do as a competition process. I won't talk about it. I want you to interpret your own way. So it was a brick factory. All these peripheral walls were used as storage areas. They used to store, after the bricks are manufactured, for drying they used to store in this, all peripheral wall was used. And the brief only said one thing: you cannot remove this tower because it has a certain historic, symbolic connection to the space. We won that competition and we were invited to present it to the jury. It's sad that the project never happened because finally the brick lane guy said, I won't sell the land back to the city. He increased the rate and the city couldn't afford. So, but the idea we were trying to do there was, how do we do nothing? Is it possible whether you can do a project where do nothing, just do cleaning and open up what already exists as a public space and leave it? So for us, lesson one, it's not necessary that you have to become a designer and start doing, adding things to what already exists. We did nothing. We just cleaned it up, created a new play area in the middle, and just left it. So it gave us a confidence that, okay, some unknown guy is sitting in unknown place. Forget about anybody knowing us. Nobody knew us. Our neighbors also didn't know that we existed. So it was quite kind of confident booster. Okay, we can compete. And when we went there, there was some kind of a seminar after the competition. We met all the jurors. And I'll never forget what Sotomayor said, like, it's much more mature than all the team members seems to be in terms of age. One of the things I did after winning the competition was when that conference was there, I took the whole team. We didn't have a penny, but we were thinking of going there and we managed to go somehow. So the idea was that all of them will get exposed to meeting the jury and in a way that I thought that was one of the way of building a team. And then when we came back very confident, in fact, we were very cocky also at that time. Then we were searching for competition. Then we found this competition, which was a mixed. There were 20 architects worldwide who were invited to participate in this prestigious competition. They wanted to extend the WHO headquarters in Geneva. And they were supposed to choose 10 teams from the open stream, and 30 teams will go into the second stage of the competition. And those 20 people were also asked to submit the first stage of the competition, but they will be judged separately. And when we read the list, who and who were there, Sana, everybody, all big architects from all over the world. हम लोग सोचा अभी क्या करेगा, अभी तो छोटा मोटा तो जीत गया, अभी इधर क्या जानना है हम लोग को, मतलब चलो जाते क्या करते देखेंगे. So we worked very hard, I think 1.5, 2 months. Day, night, we worked. And then we submitted, and we were pleasantly surprised that they finally decided to purge the list to 9, both open and invited together. And we were among the 9 people who were even, asked to get into the second stage of the competition, which was like long drawn 3 months of work. And then each team was paid 25 lakh rupees equivalent of in Indian rupees. So Hungary team saw money for the first time. I said, okay. But then I said, there's no point in just keeping the money, so let's all go. We were 4 of us. We went to Switzerland and blew away all the money. Okay, so, and then we wanted to see the site. First time we felt, okay, we should see the site. Basically, paisa hai to ghumne ka hai. So everybody said, let's see the site. And we hardly saw the site. Okay, when we did go to the site and see it, and then we thought, okay, it perfectly, whatever proposal we did, is pretty appropriate. We should develop it. Actually, the idea was Switzerland has a very good system of competitions. In the second stage, it's very elaborate. To the scale of 1:50, you have to develop details, construction, systems, everything. Structurally, everything needs to be resolved. Almost good for construction kind of a resolution is what they expect at this stage. Just imagine, individually and collectively, none of us have made one building independently. So, and we are supposed to make WHO headquarters building, resolve it, and well, I say, yeah, there are two ways of learning swimming. One is to jump and learn, and one is like plan too much, strategize and jump. So हम लोग बोला खुद जाएंगे ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा क्या होगा मर जाएंगे ना ठीक है. So we jumped, and whatever like limitations are there, we tried like very hard to figure it out. Each one of us worked out of our skins, and when finally we submitted, we finished fourth in a competition which had some 7 or 8 Pritzker winners as competitors. We finished for, it's not that we ever dreamt we'll win. The fact that we were there on the table for discussion was like for us it was absolutely boosting we required at that point of time. And we were all invited at the expense of the WHO to come and present, and I could get as many people as possible for them. So again we went without reason. सब लोग पहुंच गए, चलो देख के आने का. So, but it was an amazing thing in this central courtyard. Each model was placed. So Switzerland has a very nice way of competition. This whole context model is made by the organizers. Each one, before presenting, they have to insert their proposal into it. And the jury, in one scale, in this courtyard, we were asked to present. In winter, sometime in November, December, freezing cold. They set up a thing, and in the cold only you are supposed to present. So we presented. The jury had Bernard Schumi, because Bernard Schumi's father did the main building. So Bernard Schumi was there, Dominique Perrault, the French architect, all these architects who you revere and study, and suddenly you see them sitting and then you are presenting it to them. So they listened out to us, and then they said, we have to wait for 3 days for the result after the second submission. We said, अभी ऐसा तो पैसा उड़ाने आया तो 3 दिन रुक जाते हैं कैसे, कुछ तो जीतने का तो है ही नहीं. So ठीक है, we stayed back 3 days. So they invited, once they were announcing the result, they invited everybody to, and such beautiful system. The day we submitted, the envelope containing the content is handed over to the public attorney of Geneva. She has all the documents to identify. So nobody else in the organization knows anything about the authors till we went to present at the second stage. So she came and jury gave her the report, and then for us the most moral boosting thing was the chief of WHO came and told, when we opened the envelope, when we saw India, I said, India? And they said, double check again. So they double checked again, and then they said, okay. So he came and told, we were pleasantly surprised. And that gentleman was very nice. He worked in India for some time. He was in Delhi and he was in Vellore or something like that. So he said like he has a pleasant memories of India. And we were pleasantly surprised. And then he said that if you want to meet the jury, there's a dinner that night. We could go to the jury and meet the jury in person. All the participants. So free खाना मिल रहा तो पहुंच गया हम लोग. तो we met the jury, and I think it was Bernard Schumi who came and told us, actually we chose your proposal. It was shot down by the WHO organizers because they said, इतना अच्छा सुंदर beautiful Lake Geneva is here, और तुम लोग पूरा building मट्टी में बिठा दिया. The idea was we don't, as a respect to the main building, our proposal was completely sunk. बोलता है, our staff will jump with her, like saying that इतना वजह view है तो तुम लेके जाके garden में नीचे लगा दिया. The winning one had made a tower in this corner, but that's okay. We thought also it was appropriate in that sense. So, but it started giving these things, these small things started giving us confidence. Okay, this was our thing. We sunk everything and we extended the park onto the terrace of it. So actually you don't see anything as if it's an invisible extension. And what we thought was the strength of our project led us to the losing of the competition, because they said, who wants to see a courtyard when they have a beautiful view towards Lake Geneva? तू क्या courtyard बना के क्या दिखा रहा है हम लोगों को? By sinking the building down. So, but we still said, okay, there is some strength in our work and we should continue pursuing this. And again, they gave us 35 lakhs of additional prize money. हम लोग बोला अभी 2 साल तो we can survive. Okay. Our idea was not to build, like, we also felt that it's beautiful building, beautifully maintained, beautifully constructed, beautifully detailed, amazing building. We said we will never be able to match with our skills, so let's do something which is our strength. Make something which is invisible and show it as the strength of the project. So then came the competition in Bamiyan. I think many architects in India also participated. Vijay, you also participated, no? Yeah, okay. Here again, alien context, know nothing about the site, know nothing about the thing. Here again, the strategy of underplaying the project. We just made 3 meditative cubes sit on the landscape, and each one is an open typology they can put to any use. Today it could be cultural center, tomorrow it could be something else. This is the first time we were exploring the idea of making architecture devoid of function, in the sense it's not over-determined by the function. Is it possible to create architecture that is independent of function? Here again, we were one of the 9 finalists who were asked to present to the jury. This is the competition we won and built. I think it was opened in 2022. And 2023, we won the Korean Presidential Award for this project, for being the best civic building, cultural and civic building. Again, same strategies of creating a void, building very less, giving back the park to the city, because this was located, I think in one of the slides it is there, yeah, in the dense part of the city. Okay, I don't know, I think the slide is missing. So it's in dense part of the city. They wanted to make a art center and a cultural complex. So again, we just subverted the whole function, made a park on the top, and completely made the facility subterranean with just these 2 plazas, 2 pavilions that give access to the So in a way, this project is used as a connector to connect this around. At the street level is there's a river going below, one level below, and there's a river promenade that runs across. So we basically use this project to urbanly connect different levels and different parts of the city. And again, just made architecture independent of the function. And here is where I want to tell you a story about post winning the project. On one early morning, 4:30, 5 o'clock, I randomly got up and checked the email, and there was an email saying that you won the competition and you have to come to the city to present. Obviously, we were overjoyed and also scared कि अभी बनाना है तो कैसा बनाना है, तो जीत तो गया कैसे भी करके. So not equipped in the sense we are not a big office. So. And I'm sure they never told us, but they must be pleasantly surprised that an Indian architectural firm won the competition. But ठीक है. So we were asked to give a public lecture in the city. There was an exhibition of all the selected, some 10 selected entries. And post that, we were supposed to give a public lecture. Like Shreyash was doing last night. That's the first time I ever stepped onto a stage. We didn't know. We were shivering in our legs. Half the people don't know English. There was a simultaneous translation. And me and one of my Spanish colleagues got up. So how we used it as our strength? हम लोग जैसा अभी बोल रहे हैं ना, जैसा मैं बोलूँगा नहीं, आप सिर्फ देख लो. अच्छा है ना, तो कुछ बकवास बोलने से तो ठीक है, देख लो. And they thought maybe because of English they are saying it, so it's okay. We showed it. And post that, and we had a conversation about public projects. And in the afternoon, they said you have to go and meet the mayor. They told us, the organizers told us that he doesn't know English, the mayor, but he wants to meet you. हम लोग गया तो हम लोग इंग्लिश में बोल रहा है, अरे इसको क्या बोल रहे हैं यार, what do we tell this guy, he doesn't know, he knows English. He was not telling us anything, he was listening to the garbage we were speaking. तो सुन रहा है कुछ बकवास कर रहे हैं लोग. तो then when it was going out of control, like before he formally, he said, I stayed in New York for 5 years, working for UN. क्या बकवास कर रहे हैं आप लोग? And somebody misled saying that he doesn't know English. But he didn't hold grudge against us. He told us one thing, that it's your project, build the way you want it. I don't think you require my intervention, but if there is any problem, please come back to me. Otherwise, project will get built the way you want to build it. मैं सोचा क्या सुन रहे हैं हम लोग सोचा तुम लोग बेवकूफ़, कुछ नहीं मालूम है, हम लोग बताएंगे क्या बनाना है. So we were thinking that they will somehow mishandle inexperienced people. So he said that. And then while we were coming out, he told that post winning the competition, it is not a coincidence, the same juror who was the chairman at WHO is also a juror here. And nobody knew, but he knew our firm. So he wrote the French architect Dominique Perrault wrote a letter to the mayor saying that build exactly the way it's designed. So गोरा वाला लिखा तो बना दिया वो लोग. बोला change नहीं करना है तो change नहीं करना है. So he said nobody will touch. You can design the way you want it because jury wrote it. हम लोग सोचा कि हम लोग ड्रीम में है, रियलिटी में है भाई. But trust me, the project got completed without us going to the mayor or any city official. We just had to work with a local architect because that's mandatory, because all the documentation needs to be done in Korean. So it's again luck. That man was building all Caesar's projects in Korea. So actually he's a better architect than us. So again stroke of luck, chalo. So even if we make mistakes, there's someone who's overviewing and correcting. So, but he was nice. He said, "That's your project. I will exactly do the way you people wanted to do it. I won't take any ownership it, but I'll get it executed because that's no." And also, we didn't have to search for anybody because they said whoever is the highest position architect in the competition will automatically become the local architect. Korean, highest ranked Korean architect will become the local architect for us. So we don't have to search for anybody. So everything like a dream. Only in 2013 we woke up from the dream. 23. Building bhi ban gaya. President award bhi mila. We went only 4 times while construction was on. Can you believe it? And it was exactly the built way we drew it. Of course, taking again, dragging Vijay into the conversation, the plus point of it is it got built. The other flip side of it is perhaps if you had more interaction with the people or the client or something like that, perhaps it would have taken a little bit different shape. I don't know. But for me, getting built was more because abhi tak to log bol rahe tu banaye nahi. So it was important that we had to build. So this change completely changed the confidence levels, and also one of the important things, abhi paisa bhi nahi aa raha to credit to milna chahiye na team ko. So I made it a point, everywhere we went, the entire team went. पैसा है, पैसा नहीं है, भीख मांगा, कुछ भी हुआ, गया, सब लोग गया. Each one was there in the public lecture, each one was there in the exhibition, each one came to meet the mayor, and in every credit, everywhere it carries, and that's one more culture we have a problem here. Our architects don't give credit to the people who work for them. You assume everybody is like, for example, Vijay is a star. Everything he does, actually he doesn't do anything or less, but he gets all the credit. Somebody else does work in the office, no? Someone did drawing, someone got credit. Someone fails to acknowledge somebody has done the drawing. Then I made it a point, yes, it's them first, me last. So everywhere they are there. So for me, what was the motivation? मेरे को एक ही करना है, whether we are winning competition, losing it's not that we won everything we did. Now you will see also, some we lost. So it doesn't matter. We don't even bother whether we are winning or winning. It's about, I have developed a certain level of skill set for my team. Can I retain them or not? What is that I need to do to retain them? And I'll do everything for that. This immediately after the Dutch WHO, here again we were finalists. It was a housing competition. Now after the WHO, suddenly people have realized that there's an office that exists. So we do get all invitation for competitions. Even for some open competitions, they think that we may not see it, so they send an email, a link saying that, okay, this competition is there. We invite you to participate. So that way we got into this habit of continuously. So all these years, no client, no telephone, nobody came to the office, nobody paid fees, nothing. So in a way, we are living in our own parallel world. Is it ideal? No. Is it something you recommend for others? No. But what else I will do? I cannot do anything else. कोई accept ही नहीं कर रहा तो क्या करे भाई? कुछ तो अपना तो create करना पड़ेगा ना? There's no other option. So I won't say it's a virtue, it's a limitation ko. How do you make it count? So there is a key word for at the beginning of it. So that actually that key word, which is part of the larger principles we spoke in the beginning, is what defines the project. There's no point to describe the project. It's an old age home in Switzerland. This was an invited competition. We finished 4th. This is one competition we won, but we will never be able to build because they changed the rules and they said you have to be a South American architect. So I said, okay, I can't be born in South America, so. What you can see consistently across our projects is they are defined less and less and less. It's a space module that defines a project. It's not the function that defines the project. Because we realize that one of the biggest problems the modern architecture faces is functional redundancy. If you want to avoid functional redundancy, it has to be as open as possible. Can you really make an open architecture? We don't know, but we are trying. Here we were asked to make a visitor center in the middle of the forest. क्या context समझेगा तुम? Google में आप देखेगा ना, बस photo देखेगा और कुछ तो context तो है ही नहीं. So we had to invent an abstract construct for this. This sketch defines what exactly we were trying to do. So we said we won't use any material from outside. We will use only the felled logs in the forest, and everything is made of wood and logs only. So one log is split to make a structural member. Yeah, this was in a way a bit breakaway from whatever the projects we were doing, and because all those projects were integration projects. We were trying to fit into a constraint. But this project demanded a concert hall which will have unique disposition in terms of where it sits. And they also want grossly misused word iconic. They want an iconic structure. A structure which not necessarily is contextual, but something which induces a sense of newness. And it was perched on top of a hill, and this site was chosen for that. We were one of the 7 finalists for this project. We had to make 2 auditoriums. So it was just a play of 2 rectangular volumes of same proportion sitting on a platform. Oh, you want me to? Here, no? I'm quite loud. Yeah. So you can have a panoramic view of all around the hall. You can get a panoramic view of the thing. The entire, whatever you see is the structural system. So it's not that the shape has come out of a certain kind of a constructive order. This is one project I really love it because it's again, it's about doing very little or nothing in terms of, it was the National Museum of Finland. Actually, Alvar Aalto's building is just opposite this. It's an Alvar Aalto building. So it's an old museum and they wanted to make an extension to the thing. Okay, there was no restrictions on what when you could attach the building to the old building, made a new annex, it's all up to us. Our natural intuition is to build less or build nothing. So here again, you'll go back and see in section. This is the only pavilion we made. Rest everything, we made an internal connection between the old museum into a subterranean. They wanted an exhibition, contemporary exhibition space which is double-heighted where they could keep the objects, and kept the garden which is there on the surface level as same. This one we won a 5th prize. For me, this is a very important project because first time we won a competition in the European continent. They needed a building for meat market. It's a downtown city. It's a very tight. You can build edge to edge. There's no building. Initially there was a building. I think they raised the building and they wanted to make a meat market, which also acts, there are like actually topographically it's very interesting. It's at a higher level. The site itself acts like a platform for you to come down and go down to the water. This is a river, so. The first time we explored the idea of not building in situ on site because it's a tight site and very difficult to. So this, the black part is already a built part. So we had to just insert something inside this itself. So first time we explored the idea of in situ concrete, rather what do you call prefabricated reused concrete. So all the elements have to be sized according to the manufacturer's dimension. So it's a different kind of modulation of spaces. Everything is determined by what is industrially manufactured in terms of columns, in terms of beams, in terms of roofing system. And this is the rooftop of it. It's a restaurant. So first encounter, like India, after the project is commissioned, they said no money now. They said no money now, we'll see. So here again, the same idea of what we used in the building itself is used as some kind of a conductor. So there's a public access. This whole part is a public access, which is, the program is only this much. It's used more like a connector. The building acts like a connector more than. All standardized elements, standardized dimensions. This is an architecture determined by what you get from the market in terms of reused concrete elements. So now we have become big architects in Suncheon city. So mayor said, you are invited to the competition to do the. Suncheon City Hall. Of course, it was an open competition. We were just invited to participate. Which why I shared the article written about Suncheon's project by a Korean architect. He won this competition. He's from the same city. So we finished third in this competition. So here again, the idea was to build less. So this was our site. We said we only required 50% of it. We'll give back 50% to the city as a park. This whole city, the whole land is given back to the city, though they had the whole thing. So the public volume is this. And these are all private offices for the mayor and the halls. And this is a parking block. But anyway, we finished only third. We didn't win the competition. And a local architect, very good one, has won the competition. Imagine somebody who hasn't built a small house is conceptualizing a 1,000,000 square feet of project. So I again re-emphasize, building has nothing to do with skills to design. Absolutely nothing to do with it. And that's not rocket science. Anybody can learn at any stage. So लोग बोलते हैं ना, अरे तू नहीं बना रहा है, तू आर्किटेक्ट कैसा है यार, कैसा आर्किटेक्ट है? ठीक है, आर्किटेक्ट नहीं है, क्या फ़र्क पड़ता है? कुछ नहीं ना. कितना बिल्डिंग बनाया? So young kids, sir, how many projects are under construction to work in your office? I said none. I said, what nonsense, like, you know. No, I want to learn construction. Well, go and work on a site then. Why you want to come to an architect? Here again, it's see, there are certain consistent ideas which run about modulation, about free of, so today mayor's office is in this, tomorrow it can go in this, tomorrow this can take another function. Absolutely, this is made of, since it's a city of the forest, we thought we will do it in wood. So they also said that it's an appropriate material in the competition brief. So the entire project is made in wood. Yesterday, that Rajalakshmi was telling you have to hold the hood to know what is wood. But we made a building without understanding what this wood wants to say. There are other ways of looking at it. So this we gave back to the city as a park. They want to packly build. Ironically, the one which won also builds in the perimeter and has a courtyard in the middle. But the idea here was to, like, create the park as the main convergence, and building just incidentally book holds one of the edges. So suddenly we became like, known architects in Swiss competition network. So everybody invites, छोटा पोटा कोई भी बुला लेता है हम लोगों को. This is an interesting, I think it's representative of a lot of projects in India also. There is a traffic intersection. This is a peripheral part of Zurich. This is a traffic intersection. Now it's a playground, and they wanted, and there is a school, there's an existing school here, there's an existing school here, and a sports facility. They wanted to make upper primary school and a gymnasium. And this is like typical Swiss way of doing. The schools are private, but they have to have a certain component of the program to be public, accessible 24/7 to public. In this case, they wanted a sports arena which needs to be publicly accessed 24/7, even on holidays also. And the toughest part was there's a public underground drain that was running across this. So, and you cannot make foundations in that area. And the program requires a larger footprint, which mandates that you need to build cantilever on that part of it also. So it was more of a structural challenge. We came out with a system where this whole part is cantilevered. The structural 3D you saw in the last one, this whole part is cantilevered. The entire superstructure part of it, the entire part is cantilevered. So this, can you see this dotted line? This is the drain, which doesn't allow you to have any kind of a foundation on top of it. So we had to evolve a structural system which is suspended from the top. This is how we envisaged the whole. It was more of a structural resolution than an architectural resolution. This whole part is cantilevered off. These central things take all the load, and you have this peripheral tensile things which hold the whole structure together. We were one of the finalists, 6 finalists in the project. This is again Korea. Korea and Switzerland have become our second homes without going there. Yeah, they have something called National Design Complex. So way back in 2014 or something, they made a master plan of this area just 10 miles outside Seoul, which is connected by the metro and all public transport. They call it a museum complex. So the museum complex constitutes an architecture and urbanism museum, design museum, art museum, children's museum, you name it, they have it. So the first project was, they divided into each of these components. This was an architectural thing. This site was the site for which we participated in this. It's called design thing. And this is the children's one. And there are some like smaller. And they had a master plan which had a colonnade which is connecting all of them perimeterally. So you buy ticket underground from the parking area, and then you can freely go to buy one ticket and go through the entire museum complex, which is each one is a different building, different program, but all of them share a common parking area. The whole thing is a parking below, monster. So there was a first, they had a competition for this architecture and urbanism thing, and beautiful project. I think some Spanish architect, Alejandro Zarapolo, won the competition, and it is almost completion. When this competition, the second component of it was floated as a design competition for the thing. So there are many things we inherited in the master plan. That's and then at this level of connection. So what we are supposed to do is place your whatever intervention in the area provided here. Again, natural instinct was too much of building. We should not build much. Anyway, there are 2 subterranean floors which we can use it for museum also. Abhi kya banane ka? Zyada nahi banane ka. So our laziness became our strength also. I don't know. Okay. So this is one of the subterranean levels where those circular movements bring natural light, and you just have this reminiscent of this Korean tea houses and Korean pavilions. You just have this whole structure, substructure is in concrete and superstructure is in wood entirely. So we gave back this garden to the master plan. You could build everything. Ironically, the winner builds everywhere. So here again, it's an exercise of restraint, exercise of defining minimally, exercise in doing less. And we used wood as the main expression element, and there's a library on the top, so the entire light is from this wooden trellis screen. This is the section. So the museum is this much, with a courtyard in the middle. So you have other programs like library and administration and some other activities. So you look back into the quadrangle from one side, and you visually are connected to the rest of the city and the river on the other side. And this whole part is given back to as a garden. So consistently, we are building less, we are defining less, we are giving back some green areas to the people, and resultantly working less. This is my favorite project. So they were contemplating an extension to the Master Severi Fence Museum. This is Master's work. It's primarily a renovation of it, and there's a glass dome, there's a church, which kind of protects all the historic remains of a church, and this was our site. So this is one competition where we had to think about the visual lines of people approaching. At no point you should be obstructing the master and the glass. It's also a heritage structure, so the ensemble you are not supposed to block visually from any of the access routes possible to the. So essentially it was an exercise for us in determining the roof lines, and roof had to determine the architecture of the ensemble. So when you're coming this way, you're not blocking anything. This is visible. Coming this way, you're not supposed to block anything. And they were insisting that we created a common plaza, which becomes, since it's an extension of this, so both needs to share some kind of a common plaza. And roof becoming, first time in our architecture, roof became a defining element. I wish we had won the competition, we were close, but we didn't. This was entirely made of wood. This again a museum, and very recent one. Here again there was an old museum, and we had to make an extension. So there's a street that actually defines the whole site, so we just had to build around it. There's not much to talk about, but yeah, here again, see, the simple things is like build as minimal, as simple as possible. We just took the rhythm from the old buildings and just used it as the structuring order for project. This is Alvaro Altoni reading newspaper. So again, the recurring consistent idea of making architecture without content. Maybe leave it to the curator to decide what is the internal configuration. Why am I supposed to get into it when I know nothing about it? So the idea is, as an architect, how do you determine the degree of your intervention, how much you will act, and how much you will not restrain from acting? It's as much about building as it is about, building as less. This is our new winning project. I was talking about some of the colleagues in the morning. There is an existing school and a playground here, and there's a gymnasium. So they had to add additional classrooms. This is our intervention. And there's another standard public sports facility they needed. Otherwise, this whole space was a free space. So we had to build in that and build as less as possible, and then this is our intervention, defining the terrace. One of the interesting part from 2000 onwards, Swiss competitions don't allow renderings. Swiss competitions don't allow color drawings. You have to make everything in black and white. Fantastic. Focus is on work. So जो हम भूल गए ड्राइंग करना फिर सीख लिए. This is one interesting project. I wish we had won, but we were the finalists, but we didn't win it in the end. It's in Tunis, one of the North African countries, facing the Mediterranean. It's a very old culture like India, pretty random. They conduct a competition and they don't give address also, where you have to spend the competition entry. So that kind of a country like ours, pretty random. But the project was sponsored by the UN Cultural Fund, so they had money, so somehow they wanted to. So, very interesting. This was a church at one point of time. It was a mosque at some other point of time, and it's an abandoned, unused structure right now. And this part is absolutely random. National Museum built in 70s. This could be any building in Pune, Hyderabad, anywhere. Hopelessly bad. I see more, I think that we should not do anything. So they said that you have to make a master plan. Sits on top of a hill. And beautiful. They're like Roman ruins. There are layers of history within the site itself. So you have to be very conscious about how much you build. You're not supposed to over-landscape it. So it was an exercise in restraint, which we love. So finally, we ended up adding only this pavilion to define the courtyard, create some kind of a connection, landscape connection between all these are existing buildings. The only addition is this and some subterranean part of it. So when you look from the city, you only see this part. Here again, we kept it as loose as possible. We just got the rhythm from the existing bad building and the reasonably well-articulated church, mosque, whatever you call it. So we got the rhythm from that. We just repeated. We made a simple structure with some underground program. This is the old structure. We didn't touch it at all. So our addition is here, low-key addition. This is essentially about doing as less work as one can in a project. So we use that piece as a compositional element to enhance the centrality of the existing museum, define the garden, open up new connections, and that's it. You don't need to do anything more. All this were like, just cleaned up and then garden was created. But you people should check the winner. It's beautiful. Some German architect has won the competition. What he has done is, he has taken a module of one of this module and just repeated in the courtyard. As in Islamic architecture, you have that repetitive element which runs all over, and some of it removed as a void. And it's a metallic structure, which costs less, which could be used as an open museum, whatever the extension museum they wanted. It's beautiful. No shame in losing to a better idea. This is a tragedy project for us. We worked hard for 3 months. We sent an entry, and we thought it's somehow a accumulation of whatever we have been doing over the last 10 years in terms of ideas. Sab beja, except the administrative document which tells who is the author of the project. We forgot to upload it. Post jury, we receive a mail saying that, okay, there was one entry which got disqualified because it didn't reveal the thing. And this was the title of the project. And there is nothing we could do about it. We are out. Yeah, it's an interesting project. I would like to tell why I think is a representative project of accumulation of whatever we have been doing over the 10 years. It's an interesting project. Just like Central Park in New York, they have a Central Park here right now. Okay? This is downtown. The city has grown randomly like any other city subsequently. And there was a huge cry. There were 4 competitions done earlier, scrapped because activists were against building anything inside the park. And still the government wants to have a cultural complex which will have a library, an art complex, a gallery, and some kind of public amenities, because this area completely, this whole area is a university area which connects to the water edge. The whole thing is a park at this point of time. So for us, it was an exercise of how do you build inverse of a typology which is what you call it a perimeter typology, where you build. There's an image which is more representative. I'll show you that image. How do you do, in this project, everywhere there is a central court and then perimeter block. Here, the perimeter is defined by the trees. I have to inverse it. I have to make building in the void. And I have to build in such a way that it sits lightly, it's transparent, it doesn't look heavy, and each and every tree needs to be retained as part of the brief for the competition. And there are also trees in the internal configuration around which we need to organize the spaces. Extremely challenging. First time, site determined what we did, not as a generic idea. this is the grid of the trees which exist on the site. So we decided to build only these gray volumes on the ground and just open up everything for the existing. So we don't want to cut a single tree entirely. First time, abstract idea is out of the window, and some idea has to come absolutely out of the necessity of building around the trees. So the idea was, how do you build transparently in anything? In the whole exercise was about how do you retain this perimeter, do not take away the character of a park, and the whole ground floor as much as possible need to be given back to the park for public activities. And these are the functional vertical circulation things which will take you to the below the level of activities and activities above the ground. So for us it was absolutely challenging. The grid came, 9-meter grid came out of this tree grid, and then you have to remove out everything, and very different kind of a typology where the perimeter becomes the greenery and you are building it in the centrality of the space. And we would have definitely been on the table till the end if we had made it. Sad ending to 10 years of practice. So now I want you people to reflect that, does our work in any way reflect these ideas which we keep talking in our writing, in our earlier slide when we spoke about the principles? And these are independent of the context. They're just ideas. Thank you.
I am still processing what happened over here, so I don't have any other words. It was a totally different way of working, and I'm sure there are a lot to take from and a lot to think about from this presentation. Thank you so much, sir, for this absolutely amusing presentation.